When we think about growing old and also growing healthy, this helps us to relocate a discussion that somehow is emerging everywhere, and that is related to the fact that we have a huge problem concerning the values that we have been building our societies during the last years. So that's why I would like to propose you that we reflect on this transition from the Homo sapiens to the Homo salus. And I think that the COVID-19 has been a proxy cause that really we are in the beginning of human shakeup. And this shakeup, either it will prompt us to new levels of human dignity, or this will just be another story of exclusion and parody when we consider the human existence. So when we look at living longer, I think you are aware of one of the most interesting researches done by a journalist that found out that there are several points in the world that he called the blue zones, where people are living longer and healthier. And some of these zones are located also in different continents. So there are some patterns that can be found here, like, for instance, Okinawa, Icara in Greece, Sardinia in Italy, Nicosia in Costa Rica, or Loma Linda in California. And some of the conclusions that come up is that, yes, growing old is related to move naturally, and belong to the right tribe, have a right outlook, and eat wisely. So when we look and consider these conditions, and then we go into the details how all this is immersed in the communities that live longer and healthier, we come to some very interesting questions. And of course, these questions are questions that concern us today. These also are questions that could be a way with the COVID-19 crisis to wake us up to what are the real challenges that we are facing today. This is a lady from North America in California that belongs to one of these groups. And when you read the stories of these people, you come up very easily that the decisions that can be made are decisions that can be done at the community level, of course, but they are individual decisions. And these decisions will increment the capacity of communities to really grow old. And here is one picture of what is a common meeting in Sardinians. So the honor the family is one of the top high-level issues in this community. And when we look at how the Sardinians are doing related to the COVID-19, there are some differences. And this is a strike evidence that somehow these blue zones not only can help us grow old, but they can help grow healthy. I just invite you to read through this, because really these are very interesting findings related to this crisis that we are all immersed today. Now, grow healthy. What does that really mean? You know, I think every one of us has an interpretation, a definition of what it means to grow healthy. And I like to go back some ages ago and look at some of the conceptions that have been there and that clarify somehow that the idea of growing healthy is not something new in the humanity settings that we have today. And when we try to understand what connects the different communities and different phases of human history, we come to very interesting conclusions. And I just put one of them here. All their life was spent not in laws, statutes, or rules, but according to their own free will and pleasure. So this is utopia, we could say. Yeah, but this utopia has led these philosophers to think on how and what does it really mean to grow healthy during your lifespan. Hable introduces us to this concept of do what thou wilt. So because men are free, so grow healthy means to be free. They are well-born, well-bred, and conversant in honest companies, have natural an instinct and spur and prompted them into virtuous actions and withdraws them from vice, which is called honor. So Hadley invites us to consider that when we are looking at science as an answer to live without conscience, we might come to a condition of the ruin of the soul. And what is then conscience? So conscience are integrity, principles, the difference between what is right and wrong, ethics, morality, scruples. I would say that when we look at what is going on in the world today and the consequences of this coronavirus crisis, we might find some of these key topics of Hadley as a consequence of degradation of some situations in several human groups. Integrity, principles, sense of right and wrong, ethics, morality, scruples. So all of these help us to understand that somehow, as we have been defined by the Homo sapiens, and during these last 260 years, what have we been doing to grow healthy? And what has been the consequences of these wise men that was introduced by Carl Linnaeus in 1758? So, where did we come with this Homo sapiens? Well, this Homo sapiens has been able to increment inequality in a way that some say has never been seen in the world before. This Homo sapiens has been able to destroy 82% of the wild mammals, 80% of the marine mammals, 50% of the plants. This wise man has been able to look at the other species, but not only at the other species, but at the other humans, and create an opinion of difference. And Charles Darwin put it quite well. In the struggle for the survival, these wise men, the fittest win out of the expense of their rivals because they succeed in adapting themselves best to their environment. One question that we could pose today is, those who are dying of the COVID-19 are part of those that they have not been able to really adapt to the environment, and therefore, if they go, they go. This is a very profound question that we have to pose ourselves today, as we can see that some of the leaders of the world today are somehow introducing this kind of natural selection. And Martin Luther King just helped us to put again the discussion on the morality of what are the decisions behind some of the leaders that in the world today take the front lead on the crisis. So of all inequalities, injustice in health is the most shocking and inhuman. When you come to a position, when you come to a situation, when you have to decide if you make someone leave and you disconnect the machine from another one, you are just facing what these inequalities might mean. And one of the fractures in society of these inequalities is when we come to the old age, to the senior citizens. So the senior citizens are somehow included in this concept that Charles Darwin also introduced in this discussion. If the misery of the poor be caused not by the laws of nature, but by our own institutions, then great is our sin. You know, I like to think about these concepts of the misery of the poor, because we know already the poor are those who are suffering the most with this crisis. So if if the misery of the poor is caused by the laws of nature, just let it go. That's where nature makes the natural selection. But if the misery of the poor is created by our own institutions, then we have a problem. So we only start to have a problem when we consider that we are creating the misery of the poor by our institutions. Now, when we look at the Sardinians, let me come back again to that blue zone, and we see how the Sardinians deal with the senior population. They don't send them to homes where they pack together they just keep them in their houses, living with 2 or 3 generations together. So we could talk here about the institutionalization of the senior population. Okay, so if we take care about the institutions, and then therefore those seniors are not able to survive, we have kept our obligation, our mandate. But what about the misery of the poor that is caused by the natural laws? So with this, I just would like to propose you that indeed Homo sapiens is not at all sustainable. And since it is not at all sustainable, either we face the consequences of this way of thinking, of marginalization, of exclusion, of selection, and justifying by these means that we don't have the means to go after all the needs of all those that are the weakest link in our societies, or we stop and we start thinking from the ethical standpoint, from the morality, from what is wrong and good, if we are indeed going the right path. So my proposal is that we should maybe take the opportunity of the COVID-19 to make a change, and going from Homo sapiens to Homo salus. So, as you know, the word salus means health in Latin. And the proposal is that if you go back to 2016, to the Shanghai Declaration on Health Promotion, you will see these 17 areas that are covered by this main concept of health and the pursuit of health and promoting health through the promoting of sustainable development objectives. So how can we really look at, from the perspective of health promotion, into what the grow healthy means in our societies today? Well, not much. So we really need to make a change, a shift. First of all, the insectorality approach. Then the sustainability. Then we have empowerment and public engagement, equity, and the life course perspective. Because of time is not that much, I will just focus now on one of these, and it will be on the equity topic. You see, we have a social issue here. We have a social problem, a civilization problem, when we come to terms and we start talking about equity. I would consider now the societies that are living or abiding by the principles of democracy. In democracy, equity don't find a place. Because the founding principles of democracy are égalité, fraternité, et liberté. And these principles, they favor the best fit in order to survive in this society. So the very basic principle of égalité is at the root of our democracies. And what does it mean? Well, it means that we are sharing equally with the members of society in order to establish equality. Now, at the foundation of health promotion, we have equity, not equality. Why is that so? Because the principle of equity is an ethical principle, is a moral issue. It's not a governmental problem. It's a founding principle of some societies, and it's a major problem today Because when you start thinking of giving to some more than you give to others, you start having a social constraint, because that does not answer the principle of equality of what a democracy is and means to them. So consequently, when we really try to understand why the divide, why the increasing the gap, why the social inequalities, and why in some societies we are just seeing that some cannot stay at their homes, they have to go to work because they have no other way, they cannot even work from home. And why do they have to do that? If you take out the health professional group, many of them, it's because they can afford to stay at home. So the principle of equity would demand that we give more to this group in this time of crisis than we are distributing to others, and that those others maybe are not the ones who really need more. So we come here to a very profound principle that Adler could mention in this discourse. How is it that in the human species, what is this wise man doing, the Homo sapiens, when he decides to save a weakest human being from a fire, when there is no reason to apprehend that life in the context of the survival of the best fit? So when we look at the foundation principles of health promotion, discussion must be ignited in the sense that equity is at the foot, at the foundation of how we can grow healthy. You are aware of Antonovsky's proposal that the real mystery today is to understand why some people sometimes suffer less than others and move towards health. I would say that this is
Sorry about this. We appear to have lost Louis there. Oh, you've come back. Hello, Louis.
okay.
Sorry, we lost you for a moment there, but we've got you back.
Okay, so I hope now I'm back again. So to finalize, I would propose that the redefinition of the concept behind health means that we should take particular care of what information today means and how health literacy is built in our societies in order to be favorable for those who are not in the best position to not only receive that information, but also to manage that information in the sense that they can grow healthy. So some of these ideas that I've shared with you, you can find them in a text that we made available before this moment. And also, we want to invite you to continue this discussion. Of course, we can now have some questions, but we have prepared a survey where we would like to receive your input, your reflections on how health promotion today can mandate a different perspective on how we are dealing, or a complementary perspective on how we are dealing with the COVID-19 crisis. So I just took the time to look at this principle of equity. And if we don't take this as a very special foundation of our societies, I wonder if the Homo sapiens will not continue to do is destruction, not only in terms of the environment, but also in terms of who is entitled to survive and who is not entitled to survive. So this change from the Homo sapiens to the Homo salus might be a possibility to the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that interesting talk. We've had some questions come through. I'll just repeat the first one. You mentioned about a utopia. do you find challenges in health promotion with those people who are of the belief that they are happy to die young if they have a good time on the ride?
That is a very interesting question. We should be free to live as we wish. That is one of the Rabelais proposals when we talk about what is the meaning of life. Of course, that perspective, if it is the perspective that some wanted to use for their lives, health promotion might not be the exact proposal to consider how that life will be lived. But inside of every one of us, there is a movement that calls us to live, and to live the better and the longer. And this movement is rooted in the principle of entropy, of chaos. Every one of us, we fight chaos. We want to get out of entropy. But when we are immersed in a society that look at us only as objects to be part of the production, of the increment of what that society can give, then we lose the sense of ourselves, lose the sense of what is life for. And therefore, the consequence can be just what you referred. So, the moment when we shift and society is not any longer based on the financial, economic, if you want, increment that we have today as the foundation of these societies that we are living in, especially in Europe, maybe we will find less and less people that want to live like that, along the shortest and with a more intensive lifestyle. So the way the society is organized may help increase or decrease that mindset. So I would say that health promotion really can have a direct impact on that kind of social organization.
Okay, thank you. Another question's just come through. Much of what you present relates to a salutogenesis approach to health, assets orientated and positivist. So how is such a worldview getting harmed in the current reframing back to a medical model by the response to coronavirus?
Thank you. That is a very, very interesting question. I would say that it is almost absent. Of course, we have been organized in the sense that we rely on the medical setting, on the healthcare setting, our problems. And our societies during the last, in Europe, in some countries, during the last crisis, our society have been cutting down public expenditure in the health system. And therefore, that is one of the reasons why we come to the situation that we are living today. That has been already very well demonstrated. Now, the question that we should ask is, why is there in northern Italy a direct comprehension or understanding that vitamin E and vitamin D have an impact on the death rates that we find? Why don't we go to Sardinia and we study why the casualties in Sardinia are different from the rest of Italy? Of course, there are people dying also in Sardinia, but not as in the northern part of Italy. So I think that there is, from the health promotion perspective, and you see that recently, finally, the WHO came announcing that maybe the new coronavirus will stay there forever. So how are you going to manage this staying there forever? One possibility will be to invest in health promotion. And by investing in health promotion, create the conditions to increase resilience. And by increasing resilience, increment the capacity of individuals to deal and to live with the new kid in the block. But unfortunately, I would say in some countries, and I put my country as an example, we don't see any of this. We tell people can even have sunshine. And we know that sunshine can have a very direct impact in this kind of crisis. Of course, we are so worried with the issue of dying and getting sick that the health promotion initiative has not been able to make its own way as a complement approach to prepare societies, families, old people, seniors, to face this kind of crisis. I would say that today, from the perspective of salutogenesis, so you see, salutogenesis means creation of health. So from the perspective of salutogenesis, we have a set of tools that are today very well established, that do create health and help people to increment their resilience to face the new coronavirus. So why don't we talk more about that? Why don't we change the way we are organizing our society in the sense that we introduce those salutogenic strategies to deal with the new kid in the block? I believe that the health promotion community should be much more active and come forward with some proposals to deal with the situation.
Thank you, Professor Luis. We've just probably got one more time for a question and some positive feedback. It's a really fascinating presentation. Thank you for that. That's somebody who works at Derbyshire Council, and he's asking, how can we translate the passion and enthusiasm of academics and researchers like yourself into our everyday work in order to make a real difference in our communities?
That's $1 million question, testimony on this. I think we should, academic or whatever you want to call it, we should go to the front line. We should start, if we have not already done that, we should start our interaction with the communities. Offer our contribution. That's something I have done. I have put it that, you see, in my context, my cultural context, as I think it's also common to many of your cultural contexts. You see, I refuse to use the word social distancing. We should not use this. We should talk about physical distance, but not social distance. That is a tremendous error. And therefore, from this perspective, if we think salutogenically, you can make a lot of changes in your surroundings, in your families, settings, etc. Second, in my own context, the health services have been concentrating all resources that are left after the crisis and all the public spending cuts. Everything has been concentrated to help people with the COVID-19. And so, for instance, smoking cessation support is not possible to find anywhere. There are no clinics, no hospitals, no doctors offering this so important, because many people heard now that, well, using tobacco, it's not that favorable to increment resiliency to the new coronavirus. So this could be a trigger for me to stop smoking, but where do I go? And so I have contributed to this access problem for support to smoking cessation by creating a portal in the web that is tailored and wants to stop smoking. And this portal is based in the principles of health promotion, and in a way that you can, from home, you can use this resource. Of course, it might not solve all the problems, but some people might get help from this resource. It took many years to build this. And now when this crisis came in, I could see that, well, using this sense of coherence, increment of those that are affected by this pandemic, and while incrementing their sense of coherence, investing in the creation of their own health in order to solve the issue of smoking, it can have a result. We are talking about 32% of those using this kind of instrument to help them to stop smoking. So a web-assisted tobacco cessation tool is a possibility. I would say that there are so many problems. Why not think salutogenically when we are looking at those different issues and see how health promotion can bring a very real life proposal in order to contribute with preventive strategies or with the curative approaches that we are today having in our societies. So for me, I think that the community, the health promotion community, should come to the front line with innovation, with proposals, and with a very direct call to a new morale, to a new set of values. And in this new set of values, demand that those who are in charge of these very critical times respect those values of altruism.
Thank you, Professor Luis. And just one final question.
Cut down that logic of the survival of the best fit.
Lovely. Talking of the web, another question finally, just to be squeezed in from YouTube, one of the listeners on YouTube or the audience, is people still are not adhering and practicing preventative measures of COVID-19. So beside the community sensitized campaigns are going on, how can we convince people to use preventative measures?
Yeah, of course, one of the reasons why maybe people are lagging behind on the preventive measures is because they don't understand them. So I think that health literacy could be a very specific instrument or tool, as you wish, that could be used. Health literacy is this capacity that people have to apprehend, to judge, to validate, to use in their own lives. Let me give the example of my own country. For more than 2 months, we heard health authorities saying you should not wear a mask. There is no relevance to use a mask, so don't use a mask. And now, during the last 10 days or so, the discourse has changed, and now there is an order that you should use mask everywhere you go when you get out from your house. These kind of messages have a consequence on the minds of people. They don't understand why yesterday it was one way and today is another way. So we should be more sensitive when we are sending a message to the public. And if the public has not the health literacy, we should increment that health literacy in a very simple way. And doing that, not from the negative perspective, not because you need social distance. Don't talk about social distance. Talk about physical distance. And because nobody wants to live far away from the others. That is absolutely nonsense. So when you come with a preventive discourse that increases some strange feeling from people, how can you expect that they will accept all the other or many other preventive suggestions that you might want them to follow? We need a coherent approach. And there is where I see salutogenesis as an overarching approach for this. You see, with salutogenesis, you first emphasize the capacity, the comprehensibility. Then you emphasize the manageability, and then you emphasize the meaningfulness of what is there that people should do. So if you take the comprehensibility and you invest in health literacy, then you have done a quite nice way to touch the hearts of the people. But then, how can you suggest preventive measures that people don't have the manageability to increment, to put in their lives? So we should be very sensitive on this. And that is where equity comes in. Because some people don't have the manageability to work out those preventive measures. So what are we doing as a society to increment their manageability? So you see, I'm talking about the 3 dimensions of the sense of coherence, one of the theories of the salutogenesis paradigm. So once we have resolved the problem of manageability, people can now manage. Then we need to check out the meaningfulness. What is the meaningfulness of that process, of that suggestion, of that strategy, of that meaning there? Or are we going against the rules, the principles, the morale of the human being? So, and this is a kind of, three poles that when we put them together in a coherent approach, you are creating health. But if you are just sending messages that are not understood by people, and then those messages, they don't apply to you because you don't have the capacity to manage, and then finally you cannot integrate that in the set of values that you have in your own life, it's natural that people will give up. So I think that the curative approach should go together with the health promotion approach. And in health promotion, there are so many ways, so wonderful ways to do that. But okay, let's take the salutogenesis perspective and root all these. The root of all this should be these 5 principles of health promotion, where equity was just one that I wanted to share with you. You see, if people don't feel that they have a value, they don't care. Maybe they will just let go the preventive measures. Who cares? But if we tell them that you have a value, and therefore we are giving you more than you are giving to the other one that already he has something, or at least he can afford to work from home, then that person will start to see that society is a coherent body that looks and are interested in his own situation. So for me, we have been lacking this component of health promotion in the current crisis of the coronavirus.
Many thanks, Professor Luis Saboga Nunes, for your time.
Each one of you might join hands together.